Sometimes life goes a little off course. That's why you need a podcast host that can go a little off topic. This is the podcast that will give you straight talk about everything life throws at you. Welcome to another episode of Off Topic with Tom Powell. And here he is. This is Tom Powell.
Good evening.
Yeah, my sound is good. All that stuff. Dude, good to meet you, man.
Likewise. I'm a huge fan of your content.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is an interesting setup you got there with the soundboards and everything behind you. That's nice.
Yeah, thanks, man. I finally moved into a house. I have set up a studio in the basement so I can it's like a dedicated room. That's it. Like that's all this room does.
Nice.
For shooting, recording. So it's been nice because normally recording has just been so, it's been like this extra thing, I have to make space here and, then what goes on in the rest of my house and all that stuff. So this is good. It's uninterrupted and everything. So
it is nice to have a dedicated space. It really is.
Yeah.
You can shut the door and not have to worry about it. But
yeah. Oh.
Dude, I really do appreciate you doing this because like I said, I've been a fan of your content for quite some time. And you share content with a lot of different people. And I got to be honest with you, because of the political nature of my brain and the way that I do content, your content is probably the stuff I share the most because I'm like, dude, you got to see what he got him to say this time. You got to see what he got him to say this time. And so I keep sending it there. I send it to family, I send it to friends, I send it to all kinds of people. So I don't care what happens. Don't ever stop doing what you're doing, even after the Trump era is gone. It is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. No, I mean, listen, the era. I mean, these people, the alt-right and everything and the center, they're not going anywhere. Like they'll be around for a while. I did mistakenly think that. It was really funny. Like when I knew I was going to have to transition what I was doing after Trump lost the election, and I said, like, I'm gonna have to change. But it was comical. I laugh when I think about it. I go, well, I'm not going to be going to Trump rallies anymore because why would he have rallies after he lost? Of course, why would that happen? And I thought, I went through this thing where I was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to shift because, I got to pivot. And I had no idea that what I'd be doing I'd probably go to more Trump rallies post loss than before.
Okay, so let's just dive right into that then. How did you get started doing that? How did you get started going to Republican rallies, more specifically Trump rallies? And more to the point, rather than just how did you get started going to rallies, how did you get started actually engaging with these folks?
Well, so I went. It started when I made the decision to, just instead of like making stuff where I'm debating people, I thought, let me just use comedy and just drive into that direction. I just push, instead of like debating the person's logic, let me just drive right down into their logic and, lean in, really, right? Like, let's do it. Let's do that.
Let's look at the world through their eyes.
Yeah. Like, let's take your logic and I'm going to run with it and make it absurd because there reached a point where I was like, I had a breaking point and it was during COVID. I lived near the modular morgues that were set up in New York City. I was downtown, I spent COVID, the worst parts of it in the East Village. And there were modular morgues set up not too far from me. You could see them. You could see bodies. Anyone who worked in or around that area could see these bodies being taken out. It was difficult to not see them. And then, you see on social media people denying that all of this is even happening. So that was a breaking point. I was like, this is just carnage happening in my city. To deny that it's even existing is like made me like just boil over. So I was like, all right, I was like on the war path. That's my villain origin story. Then I'm like, all right, let me go on TikTok as a MAGA Republican, right? And that was sort of by accident. I was sort of just kind of making TikToks and just bored because it's quarantine. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is a fun format. I pretend to be MAGA. All right, cool. And then I would do stuff in front of Trump Tower or this. And then there was this one day I was doing something in front of Trump Tower. I'm wearing some American flag shirt, dressed as MAGA. This woman comes up to me and starts talking to me and kind of trusts me. And I'm looking at her just weirded out. I'm like, what? Like, why are you even talking to me? Do you not hear what I'm saying? And then since I was dressed as MAGA, she was like, oh, I can trust you. I can engage with you. And I was like, okay, if I visually identify as MAGA, people come up to you and they say a lot more than they would normally. Right? Like I wanted people to honestly engage with me and, engage as if they were talking to their own people and engage without, because I feel like people sort of pull back a little bit when they're getting in a debate. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So when you start questioning their positions, when you start questioning their mindset on various topics, they get defensive about it. But
Yeah.
that's the thing about that I think that people like you and to some extent the correspondents on people like the Daily Show back in the day that were
Yeah.
doing it. The thing that you guys expose is you guys expose their willingness to, at the drop of a hat, believe what you have to say because they perceive you as one of them.
Well, yeah, and believe me, I have to say, but also believe, also like give their honest talking points on an issue, right? And get, and I thought, and I noticed that like if I would get someone worked up about an issue, they just stopped listening, right? Like I could go up to someone and say they're teaching my second grade daughter pronouns, and they would be absolutely incensed, right? Or I could say that the Democrats are sponsoring a bill that's going to have the government take over Medicare, right? So they say all they heard was Democrats, government, and they're like, oh, and then they would go with it. I'm like, okay, this is comedy, like because it, I come from a comedic background. I'm an actor. I'm this, so it was like, all right, this is cool stuff. This is like this comedy, this thing, and it became like, all right, wow, I was like fascinated by, I could say stuff right to them. And I was like, and the people around me could hear the difference, but they couldn't. And it was very fascinating. Like people that weren't MAGA would be standing right there, hearing the same words and going, what's happening? This is insane. And getting them to be honest, getting them to talk about how they're going to start a civil war if Trump wasn't reelected and all that.
Well, that's the thing, is it's comedic, but it's frighteningly dark when you look at the reality of what their mindset is it not?
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, I was there for January 6th. I was on the steps of the Capitol. I just happened to be there getting interviews, and then that jumped off, and I got to witness it firsthand. And I was going, okay, and that messed me up very much because I will say, like, these are human beings, and you spend time with these people, and you feel bad. You're like, you're a human being. You deserve healthcare. You deserve housing. You deserve equal justice under the law. You deserve, all of these things that, I want you as a human to have, even if I don't particularly like you, right? Like we don't have to like everyone, obviously. So, and, I met the Q shaman. I spoke to him and then I saw what he did that day. And I was like thinking, this is nasty. This is nasty what radicalization does to someone that, might be normal and decent in their everyday lives. Maybe that same person, if they saw someone struggling on the side of the road, maybe they'd pull over. Uh, because there's a good amount of people that are ill-intentioned. They're terrible people. They're ill-intentioned. They know what they're doing. They know what they're saying, and they're just bad people. And then there's people that they just happen to be MAGA, and it's just kind of tragic.
I know people like that in our real lives that have been friends for years and years and years, and who have interacted with the family on multiple levels, who I trust around my kids, the whole shooting match.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what they believe, I'm stunned. Somebody that we know that we've known for, I mean, a few decades, and then you come to find out, not find out, you come to learn that he attends like Oath Keeper gatherings and things like that, and 3%er, not three Oath Keepers, 3%er, and it's like, what? You're otherwise normal. Why are you allowing that to infest your mind? Now, the January 6th thing, you talked about what the woman walking up to you in front of Trump Tower is kind of like something that triggered something in you. The January 6th was what made me start making content on TikTok. What I had been making TikTok or content on Facebook and Twitter for years, and my wife had suggested I get on TikTok, and I was really just kind of like bumming around watching some videos, and then January 6th happened, and that's when I started making content, because that was the point for me where I said, this is not a political movement anymore. This is a domestic terrorist organization that is actively trying to end the American experiment. And
Yeah.
Then that begets me following content like yours, and then that begets an inside view of the mindset of the MAGA, and then that begets all of this information that comes directly from them, and you're no longer having to rely on other people reporting things for you. You've got somebody that you can turn on your computer, you can pull your phone out of your pocket and open up an app, and you can see somebody sticking a microphone in the face of somebody and having them tell you that, Jewish space lasers burned down the California forests, or Hillary Clinton was eating babies out of the non-existent basement of a New Jersey pizza parlor. And you're like, they're actually telling somebody this. They're telling somebody they believe to be a legitimate reporter some of the most insane shit I have ever heard in my entire. You've heard it all. What's like some of the nuttiest, like, there had to be things that when you heard it, you were like, holy shit, like that's legitimately frightening.
Let me see. Okay. So there's a few times where someone would say something that was like, this defies logic, where they were talking about, this one woman was talking about how Xi Jinping, the prime minister of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, the head of China, he is working with Trump and Putin and Modi, and they're fighting the deep state. And I said, well, wait, Xi Jinping, he's the head of the Chinese Communist Party. And she said, no, he's the only one who's not a communist inside the CCP. I said, oh, okay, right. And she had this whole explanation, and you hear like things again and again. When I go to a rally and I haven't been there in like a few months, I have to sort of have a few conversations to be like, what's the new conspiracy that just dropped? What's the new thing everyone's talking about?
Right.
Because I'm like, it just keeps going. And I think one of the things that makes it frightening for me is seeing this supercharged conspiracy generation as a result of Elon Musk buying Twitter. I've seen, I mean, there was a conspiracy that I was one of the people behind January 6th. It was a very fringe conspiracy. It was laughable when it came up. I would get a real kick out of it. And then it started resurfacing again and again and again, each time with more oomph to it. And then finally, General Flynn is sharing videos of me from January 6th being like, well, he was there. He was behind it. And I was like, okay, thank you, Elon. Like this is Elon Musk, right?
Did anything, like, have you ever been directly threatened as a result of that?
The direct threats dropped off a little bit when people make threats. I mean, I feel like I've gotten so numb to it. It's become so normalized. There's like your normal threats, the normal amount, and then they sort of increase when you do something that upsets people. It's never what you think it's going to be, for the record. I'm
Right.
sure you've been a party to that, where you think someone's going to get upset for one thing and then they don't, and they do something and people are inflamed and you're like, huh?
Oh
That
yeah.
it took a different turn after January 6th. Luckily, thankfully, people were less cavalier because they didn't feel as if they were acting on behalf of the sitting president. The way people spoke to me when Trump was in office, when they thought I am speaking on behalf of the sitting president and I'm defending the leader of the free world, and they thought that they could just say whatever they wanted with just impunity, was a lot different than post January 6th. Post January 6th, people didn't speak so explicitly. They kind of, you could tell that they were, what they would say wouldn't be as actionable versus before that people would say stuff that was very open-faced. I am going to find you. I am going to do this to you. And it was very explicit versus, then it would be like, hey, soy boy, you got no idea what's coming. It's going to come when you least expect it, and I would send it to the FBI, and they're like, that's not actionable because it's not very explicit. You get a few, there was a few people that have riled me up and everything, that sort of that made, they would send me, addresses. Luckily, I've moved around so many times that, and I took the appropriate steps. The FBI was like, all right, this is how you this is how you change your address so no one can find it. Thankfully, when the FBI came after January 6th, they couldn't find me, which you have no idea how well I've slept at night, knowing that the FBI admitted they could not find me after January 6th.
Well, that's good.
I slept like a baby after that. I was like, you couldn't find me. Oh my God. I'm like,
you're in the clip. You're in the clip. See, we've been in the same place for 20 years. I ran for public office out of this house. I ran a business out of this house. And so my address is plastered all over the internet. And so it's been on TikTok. Aerial views, satellite views of my house have been on TikTok. I've had people, here's one instance for example. I had one particular gentleman that kept making numerous accounts with the general same gist of the name and the profile picture. And they told me things like they were going to abort my children with their shotgun. They were going to cut me up and throw me in the river. They were going to leave a bomb on my porch. One time they said that they did leave a bomb on the porch and asked me to send my daughter to get it and called her out by name. And so I gave all of that to the local Chicago FBI field office. And after a little while, a little bit of investigation, gave them the dates, times, screenshots, all of that. And they reached back out to me and they said, so here's the deal. We've made contact. The person also lives in the suburbs of Chicago, not very far from me, about an hour's drive from me. And he said, without giving you too many details, you will be happy to know that the parents of the subject were quite surprised to find out that their house was the target of an FBI anti-terrorist investigation. It was a kid on his computer in his room making TikTok accounts telling me he was going to blow my house up and kill my kids. And they knocked on the door one day, the FBI, and said, hey, these accounts are originating from your house. And these threats are, I can only imagine the conversation that youngster had with his parents that day. And people ask me, aren't you afraid they're going to come actually do something? And I said, here's the deal. The ones that tell you they're going to do it, never do it. The people that want me dead, they're just going to try and do it. And if they're going to try and do it, they're going to find me anyway, because I'm not picking up. I'm entrenched. I've got kids. I've got businesses. I'm not picking up and moving the way you were able to. And if they're going to find me, they're going to find me. And that's just going to be the end of that. But it does get quite weird sometimes when you get people that are threatening to leave bombs on your porch because they disagree with you on a political subject.
I mean, it is funny when, like, sometimes certain people get more hatred, and it sort of baffles me because I can, at the end of the day, I can understand. Not that I justify people wanting to threaten me, but it's like, you know what? I embarrassed you. I humiliated you. I made you look like a dumb, crazy, insane person. Okay. And I did it to your face.
And I filmed it and I put it on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, so there's people like yourself where, like, you're sitting at home just giving your opinion. It's not, your opinions aren't that wild. You're not, calling for the abolishment of the United States government. You're not like wanting to throw away, the judicial branch. These aren't like crazy, things that you're saying. And yeah, and you'll get people being like, how dare you? You
Yeah.
know, how dare you? And yeah, it is, or like, I've had to help other people go to the FBI. I honestly think there's like a scale of like, if someone is a different race or gender, they tend to come at them a little harsher
Oh
for
yeah.
for much less. Like certain, and I've watched this play out. I've had friends that like, I'm like, you're just a woman on the internet. Like they're not even making polarizing content, and people are inflamed. They're like, how dare you exist? Like for anything other than my sexual, pleasure.
And here's the thing, you don't like what I have to say, totally understand. Like you said, you don't have to like everybody, and if we were all the same, it would be a very boring world. So you and I have different opinions. Big fucking deal. But am I really that much of a threat to you? I mean, I am a 52-year-old Gen Xer sitting in a home office, smoking weed and giving my opinion on social and political topics. I mean, is that really for people that bitch about how others need safe spaces and how they get triggered? Man, you fucking people sure do get triggered a lot.
Oh, dude.
And
So
by what?
Twitter,
A retired landscaper who's a high school dropout? I triggered you that much? Come
so,
on, man.
I mean, Twitter in the last year has definitely illustrated that MAGA conservatives are the most sensitive human beings ever. I mean, they cannot use the snowflake thing anymore. They can't use the thing of, oh, I don't get offended. These people got offended because Dylan Mulvaney made a TikTok. No, not a TikTok, an Instagram video drinking a Bud Light, and they lost their collective shit.
And drinking a Bud Light that wasn't going to be available to the public. It was literally for that one person.
Yeah, yeah. It was and they were like apoplectic. And it was so like the fact that I mean they have lost it over so much less. And these are the same people that, blamed a 200-ton freighter crashing into a bridge on diversity. A foreign, like things like that. Like it keeps going where there's a part of me that's actually almost happy that, or relieved that the rest of the public is witnessing this firsthand. Because for the last few years before Elon took over Twitter, I kept saying that there's another side of America that's taking place that people aren't aware of. Because I would travel to all these places in America and speak to people at length. And I go, this is like, there's a lot of these people that think crazy things. It's not a fringe anymore. Actually, it's not even, yeah, it's not fringe, right? Like
No, they're
the
everywhere.
election was stolen, pandemic, vaccines, abortion, birth control, poison, Planned Parenthood. That I would not say that these are fringe beliefs anymore.
So I asked you one of the craziest things you heard was prime example from right here in my town. Like I live in a town of about 13,900 people in the far southwest suburbs of Shannon. It's a rural area, a lot of farmland around us, a lot of wide open space, a lot of hunters and fishers, and it is a very red town that I live in.
Yeah.
And one of the local bartenders still is, the absolute queen of the conspiracy theory. And she was convinced, still is, that everything Trump does is designed to lure people into his trap to catch them, not Trump. Him getting arrested, him getting indicted, it's all part of the plan, right?
Oh yeah, 5D chess.
Yes, exactly. He's playing 5D chess. Everybody else is playing checkers. He's 20 steps ahead of everybody. And when Epstein got caught, in the local Facebook community chat group, there were a couple dozen of us having a conversation, and she actually said that the reason, because we were calling her out on, she was talking about how this happened because Trump was president. And he's ridding the world of pedophiles. And we said, well, what about the fact that he hung out with Epstein and he partied with Epstein and they talked about their affinity for young women together and whatnot. And she said the reason why you saw a bunch of photographs and videos of Trump with Epstein in the 90s is because Trump developed a plan then to rid the world of international pedophile rings.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he needed to become friends with Epstein to gather intel that he could then sit on until he could become president, so he could act on the information he had. And that's why Epstein didn't get caught until after Trump was president. So I said, wait a minute. So for 30 years, he let pedophilia continue to happen. He let kids continue to get it. The kids that were attacked then are now adults. There's a whole new round of
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and he just let that happen until he could become president, but he knew it was happening. You don't understand the mind.
He had to go on. It was so deep cover. Yeah, he had to spend decades, double decades, triple decades undercover.
Yeah.
He even had to participate sometimes. It was necessary.
Real. You got to make it look real.
I mean, yeah, he had to. I mean, just real deep cover. I mean, some would even argue that he's still undercover. Epstein.
Just listen. Are you waiting for him to just do one of these? And it's Andy Kaufman.
No, wait. The best one. Okay, so the funniest one. So the Young Turks sent me to DC right after January 6th during the inauguration to talk to MAGA. The funniest time for them to send me to talk to MAGA, because MAGA scattered from DC because they were like, oh, it's all a trap. None of us are going to go there because that's what the FBI wants. There was probably less than 50 people that were MAGA in DC, the entire, greater DC area, or people wearing MAGA hats, openly identifying. And, so this one guy I spoke to, he was the most vocal. And his thing was, Biden, he's not going to become president tomorrow. As soon as he becomes president, he's going to get arrested. He was describing a scenario like Law and Order, where it's like, Ice-T and Chris Maloney just swoop in, and disrupt the inauguration and just, cuff him, and they just, and, there's how it plays out in Law and Order, where they go into the boardroom during, the shareholders meeting, and it's like, yes, you're under arrest for for this. And they thought that the guy was they swore, which is funny, on so many levels, because anyone who's progressive knows that that's not how the criminal justice system works. The rich and powerful, forget the fact whether Biden's guilty. I don't think he is, but to put that aside, it's the fact that the cops with the rich and powerful would be treated that way for a minute is laughable.
But when the possibility of it happening on the other side happens, then it's, well, you can't do that. The hypocrisy that I find with the MAGA is so utterly incredible, right? Joe Biden needs to be arrested for what he's doing in office, but a president has absolute immunity. So if a president has absolute immunity, you can't touch Joe Biden for a fucking thing he's done. Which one is it, guys? And it's that way over and over and over again, right? It's when it comes to healthcare. I don't want the government in my doctor's office. Okay. Abortion. No, the government needs to get in your doctor's office. It's just always that way with them.
The abortion is that it's let the states decide. You're like, well, why not let the individuals decide?
Right.
The states should decide. Well, maybe each community should decide. Maybe, each individual person should decide. Let's just keep going with this. Take your logic and just keep pushing it, right?
This crazy Russian doll syndrome we got going on here.
No, but it's funny, because Trump was arrested today, or not arrested, his court thing,
right?
For the
court, yes,
for the Stormy Daniels things happened to. And here's the funny part: this goes across the entire political spectrum when you talk to people about what's happening with Trump. Now, people on the far left are not optimistic about this. They might snicker at it and be like, huh, but people that are, on the far left are like, the system's not going to work to bring to justice someone that is rich and powerful. This is ridiculous, right? People that are liberals, you get neoliberals, liberal, are like, oh my God, justice will finally be done, right? You had people during Trump's administration, thinking, oh, any day now, the criminal justice system is just gonna, bring him to bear. Right. And you're like, and anyone else is like, that's not how the criminal justice system works. And then you had people on the right and far right that think that they're just gonna, take him out behind the courthouse and shoot him in the back of the head. Like they're like, that's their thing. They're like, well, of course, as soon as he walks through the door, they're just gonna put a shotgun in his mouth and just blow his brains out because that's justice, right?
These fucking people, I swear to God. How do you stand to be around them? I know it's content and it can be fun at times.
Oh no, it took me. I had to take a 3-month break for a while.
Okay.
There was a point where I was like, all right, I need to sort of be away from this for 3 months. I went to one thing in 3 months. I went to I went to some Justice for J6 thing in DC, and that was it. And I was like, okay, I need to, because I was like, this is starting to catch up to me. And it's like I can feel it even after, if I've gone to too many rallies and dealt with too many people, the energy gets all over me. And it's a nasty energy. It also is destabilizing because you're around people that, it's one thing if people believe crazy things. You're like, okay, you're a crazy person. This is ridiculous. It's another thing to be thrust into an environment where everyone is in agreement about the same thing, and that thing is crazy. And it's just all encompassing. COVID never happened. Those people aren't actually dead, but they are dead. But it was China. But COVID's just like the flu. But and the election never happened, and this never happened, and J6 never really happened. That was all Antifa, and on and on and on. And you're around this environment for a long time, and you're thinking, all right, this starts to warp your reality a little bit. And you feel like you're in an alternate dimension because it doesn't feel like you're in the same world. So you're like, this is not the right dimension. Like our timelines got screwed up, and it takes a few days for my molecules to, fuse back into my body.
Yeah. Oddly enough, the way you're talking about that, I was just talking to a friend of mine here in the neighborhood about words, and he brought up a Japanese scientist who did a study on water. I don't know if you've seen that. I had to go look it up because I didn't believe what he was telling me, but it actually turned out to be true. He took a jar of water and he put it in one room, and a jar of water and he put it in another room. And in this jar, he spoke nice to and played classical music and so forth and so on. And in this room, he played heavy metal music and talked negatively and berated it, and then froze the water. And they actually formed two different types of crystals. The one that was talked nice to formed these wonderful, beautiful crystal formations, and the other one, it was all abstract and hideous looking. And I was like, "Is this real?" And I got to tell you, there's some doubts in my mind to the validity of it. But when you dig and you read all of the different articles on this guy that did this study, you're like, maybe words really do have a biological effect on us. Maybe the exposed, prolonged exposure, I guess I should say, to negativity can continue to warp one's reality, like you're talking about. And I know it's a comparison that gets made too often, but it does make you kind of realize how things like in Germany in the 30s, how they came to be. How a frenzy type of a situation where everybody is in agreement about anything, even if that thing is just
that's what, like, one of the things that upsets me the most is that, I mean, in Germany, they were not the majority.
right.
You had
Well, they're not
people,
here either.
yeah, and so you had people in the center. That's why at the end of the day, I get a little upset with people sort of in the center that think like, oh, they're not that bad. And they sort of, the both sides, hey, the far left and the far right, it's all the same, baby. Right. And they go, well, these people, let's make concessions for them. Right. Like there's someone, Moms for Liberty will come into a school district, try to get on the school board. And you have the centrists going, you know what? We need to have a diverse school board. So we need 2 Moms for Liberty there on this. And that, as if that's sort of balancing the scales between the progressives or something, and so on and so forth. And you have them thinking that this is, acceptable. Whereas, that's the part that like drives me nuts and drives me up the wall when you have concessions made and being like, all right, well, we need to, make concessions for these people, and hey, they're not so bad.
Yeah. Okay. So admittedly, you obviously you're a mutual of mine on TikTok. You probably have seen my discussion of this. I am a center left liberal. I am not far left, but I don't believe in making the concessions in any way, shape, or form for the lunatics. I mean, the Moms of Liberty, that is an all out hate group that can't be allowed anywhere near our education system.
And they're in New York City now. So they infiltrated the school boards in one of the largest, most progressive, wealthiest areas of New York City, District 2. You have multiple moms. You had one woman who ran as a Democrat, lied. She's not a Democrat. She just ran as one. She was lying. And she went mask off. And I basically listened to her talk. She should not be around. There's so many other reasons why she should not be in education. She's not qualified to be around children, hands down. And not just because of a difference of opinion. Like this, she's like she's a callous human being. And like callous towards children. She's referred to like queer students as people that can't get a date. Like if you're identifying as queer, it means you can't get a date. I watched her say this and I was like, you're an educator. Another guy on there, black guy, who thinks that, desegregation and of schools was the biggest mistake we made in America. And then he's on the school board. He's black guy, school board, District 2. These are two people that should not be in education. And they are all down for, the destruction of the Board of Education and to bring that down because, they believe in they believe in exactly what you think they should. And that's in New York City, right? There's pro-life or forced birther groups that march from their church all the way to Planned Parenthood, and they get basically an express lane from the cops to go right in front of Planned Parenthood and harass people going there to get health care. It's a lot, right? So this isn't in New York. This isn't in, some red state. This isn't in like, rural Texas or something, or, Pennsylvania, right? You know what I mean? Like this, and that thing was like sort of particularly alarming to me because I'm going, this happens everywhere.
Oh yeah, they are everywhere.
Yeah.
They definitely are everywhere. And they're not just content with, I'm going to live my life the way I live my life and leave me alone and I'll let you live yours. They want a theocracy for sure. They want a regressive state. And I do not understand for the life of me, specifically one of the issues that I have the most is the abortion issue, being the father of 3 daughters and the grandfather to 2, and having a daughter and 2 granddaughters that live in the state of Indiana. It worries the shit out of me. And I do not understand for the life of me anybody voting for somebody that is going to turn around and then tell them you can't control I'm going to make decisions about your healthcare. And you have women in red states line up and go, yep, that's what we should have. You should make my decisions for me. So what has happened to you in your life that you would line up in order to voluntarily vote for a theocracy that's going to dictatorial control your body? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And to see it infiltrate places like you said, like New York, is mind-boggling. I mean, that's why I like where I'm at, because I'm on the fringe, but I've got Chicago in my backyard. My daughter goes to school in the heart of Chicago. I've got the very progressive city. To be honest with you, the only city in 2016 that actually shut the Trump rally down. It never happened when he was coming to Chicago. Chicago shut that shit down before the plane ever touched down. So I'm rather proud of that. But yeah, I don't understand that. Question for you about these rallies. When you go into the heart of these rallies and you have this masterful way of convincing people that you're one of them, given how much you have taken off, given your popularity, given your platforms, do they ever recognize you?
Oh, that happens all the time.
Okay.
I went to CPAC and I was ducking everyone because there's when you've been doing this for a few years,
You're right.
there's people that they go to more than one rally, and I've interviewed them already, and the interview went viral on multiple platforms, and there's and I have to see them again and again, and so there's a bunch of people that they're like, oh, him, and then they'll go and warn people about me. Then I have to sort of do the interviews as someone who's like, all right, well, you know who I am, and I'm going to talk
Right.
to you.
There's no point in trying to trick you now.
Well, yeah, so it's just like, all right, cool. Like, sometimes that is its own thing. Sometimes it's nice to go mask off and just be like, this is who I am. I'm here to
Which,
do.
I got to be honest with you, I might expect to actually happen at a place like CPAC, but in some sheep field somewhere with 2,000 of his closest friends penned into some fucking yard, I imagine you get recognized a little bit less often there among the common masses, right?
Oh, it's less often, yeah.
Yeah,
It's not as much.
because
It's
they narrow their input of content, they narrow their input of information, so they're probably, unless somebody in their realm spotlights you for them, they're not seeing you
no, yeah,
on their For You
yeah,
page.
yeah. Sometimes, so I get recognized in weird places where I remember someone's kid, I think they came to like pick up their parents or something. They showed up to one of these QAnon conventions, and this person saw me giving interviews and just fell over laughing, like started staring at me, and then just kept walking. And like to go, I'm assuming it was to go see their parents. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping it wasn't a 15-year-old that was, there to, get a dose of QAnon. Uh,
Ugh.
and so I remember the weirdest one of getting recognized. This is the most twisted situation. This woman, fairly good looking. Uh, she was like, I know you, I recognize you. And I'm thinking, and she's like full on QAnon. She was wearing a Q tank top. And she used to be a DJ. She got like famously canceled. And she was my friend that was with me was like, dude, this person like is giving you eyes. They're like, you could do something with this person right now. And the person I'm like, I'm looking at I spoke to her, I interviewed her, and she's like, oh, I know who you are. And I thought to myself, like, do you though? I think like in her mind, she'd recognized me. She's like, I've seen him on TikTok, but I don't know from where. I just know he's on TikTok. And she gave me like groupie energy. And I was like, this is really interesting. This is weird. This is bizarre. You recognize me, but you don't know where, and like you're like looking like you want to eat me alive right now. Um,
Uh, so all these different rallies that you have, is it always that like some organization sends you there? How do you fund going to all of these different places?
I just make do. I don't know. It was I only became profitable in what I was doing. I don't know. It's been a weird thing with regards to revenue streams and how I make money here and there. And
I'm not,
I
yeah,
have a
I'm just
YouTube channel,
curious.
TikTok.
You
Yeah,
said,
no one's sending me. Unfortunately, I wish there was organizations that would handle the budget and all of that. So that's all out of pocket.
damn,
So
damn.
it's all like me juggling, as a creator, juggling multiple revenue streams. And it's a whole, you know, I could do a whole panel on that about how you
Right.
have to have multiple revenue streams. You can't just rely on just TikTok, just YouTube,
So you
just
earlier
merch.
you said the Young Turks sent you to something, so they didn't like send you on their behalf or anything
They
like
sent
that,
me to
or
one thing right after J6. Midas Touch sent me to a few things. This is all years ago when I
okay,
was like fresh and new. They would send me to stuff, and then that went away. I still work with Young Turks, but not on location,
gotcha.
just doing like vlogging stuff. So yeah, so that's all me like budgeting that out, and yeah, I mean it becomes expensive. So it's definitely like a very large, big piece of overhead, especially to go to a more obscure place, not obscure, I don't want to say like middle America is not obscure, but there's certain places in America that don't have direct flights. I mean, I went to
Oh yeah,
Oklahoma for the next Benedict thing to speak at that school board. There was like no direct flights. It was like I had to take two different planes, like it was, and it was just expensive. It was just me that went. I went for like, I was gone. I left my apartment at 6 a.m., and I was back at, 2 p.m. the next day, from
gotcha.
Oklahoma. And that was, it was significant to go for a day and travel for a day, it stacked up pretty fast.
Since we're on the subject, because I love what you do and I want to keep seeing it, is there somewhere where people can help assist with that? Is there
Okay.
somewhere where
Okay.
can
So
donate?
the best thing you can do is you can go to my podcast. We Are Not Journalists. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple. It's wherever you get your podcast. Just type in We Are Not Journalists. That is the long form content. It's the longest form. You'll see it like we go into it. It's a lot of, post-mortem of me traveling around the country. So me and my producing partner, we travel around the country and, document extremism. We're
Well,
doing,
if you're planning on being in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention in August, let me know. Maybe we might
oh
actually
yeah, should
come
definitely
help.
do that. Yeah, that would be, yeah, I should definitely, we should keep in touch with regards to that. Cause I definitely want to hit that up because there will definitely be a variety of counter protesters there at that time.
I
This
would
is
imagine, that,
this is
especially
this
at
is
the
the
day.
weirdest this is the weirdest election I have ever seen in my life. I desperately want Biden to win but at the same time, if I was in the same room as a member of him or his administration, I would be like yelling and screaming at the top of my lungs. At the same time, I need him to win over Trump. There's this bizarre dichotomy. I mean, of just me being like incredibly frustrated, but at the same time being like, damn it, like I have to go and campaign for you, so we don't like lose our democracy.
I agree with you completely. I desperately need Joe Biden to win because we cannot, I don't believe we could survive another Trump administration. While at the same time, if I had the opportunity, as you said, to sit down with them, I think what I would look him in the eye and say is, you promised to be a transitional candidate, so be what you promised. You did what we needed you to do. You defeated Trump. You stabilized the country. You put us back on the right path. You got some good judges in there. You signed some good laws. Now hand the baton over. Dude, you are 100. I'm 52, and I don't think anybody my age should be running the fucking country.
Yeah,
This is the demographics in America are boomers are dying off at an astronomical rate. Gen Z is coming of age at an astronomical rate. The millennials are the ones that are having businesses, have kids. That they're the now the middle aged ones. My generation, the smallest generation, is entering retirement, and because of the baby boomers gripped on the levers of power, my generation really never got a true seat at the table. I mean, Kamala Harris is a Gen Xer, but it needs to be passed off immediately to the millennials, and more to the point, I believe the Gen Zers. This is their world now, and I would that's what I would say to Joe Biden is be the transitional candidate you said you were going to be, and step the fuck aside and do it now so we could put somebody else in at the convention that has a decent shot of drawing more people in to the Big Ten. And I don't know who that is.
yeah, but that ship has sailed. I mean, for
Yeah,
someone to jump in at the 25th hour, the 11th hour, and
it would
start
be.
campaigning would be, I mean, if the DNC was going to be doing that, and they should have done that. They should have already done that like a year ago at the very latest. So to even, you know, yeah, to do that now would be like, I mean, to hand the election over to Trump. I mean, yeah, at the same time, Joe Biden, I agree with Mark Cuban. I don't want to say I agree with Mark Cuban on a lot of things, but he was saying if they were giving last rites to Biden, He's like, I would still vote for him over Trump. And I was like, fair. I was like, yeah, you could just prop Biden up. If he died, just prop him up in the Oval Office and like,
Yeah,
staple a smile to his face. And I'd be like, sure.
somebody once said you'd vote for Joe Biden no matter what if he ran against Trump, wouldn't you? And I said that I said this directly to their face. I said they could literally have to wheel him to the podium, and then we had to sit there for an hour and watch him drool on himself while he ate fucking crayons, and I would race to the polls to be the first in line to vote for him, only because he's not Trump. Because in 2020, more in sort of in 2016, but in 2020, I became admittedly a one-issue voter. Trump cannot be reelected, period. That was the only issue I gave a shit about, because every other issue that I ever cared about hinged on that outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm very, I'm very far to the left. But, and there's a lot of things that I strongly disagree with, but it's like at the same time, I've spent the last several years on the campaign trail, like the campaign trail for local candidates, local MAGA candidates and for Trump. And, I had to sit and watch Kerry Lake for weeks and everything. And so like so I'm like, all right, no, these are not the same. It's not, like you can make the case that it's this uniparty. I get it. But they're not the same at the end of the day. They're very fundamental differences. So you have, like that, there's a lot of, you can be very upset as an environmentalist that, Biden signed a lot of drilling permits. There's the Willow Project, there's a lot. And at the same time, you have the Heritage Foundation and Trump saying, Biden's done too much for the environment, which is an absurd, like to say that there's no connection between you and reality if you're saying that. But yeah, I gotta go eat dinner with my partner and everything. But yeah, man, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much
Finally
for
meeting you. I'm just so yeah, I've been following you and watching your videos for as long as you've been making them. You're stuck on my FYP.
By all means, yeah. Hopefully, we get a chance to get together sometime. You go enjoy dinner, and once again, I thank you very much for doing this, man.
Yeah, man. God bless, man. Lovely to meet you. Cheers.
Take it easy, brother. Bye.